Great. So hello and welcome to our session, which we have called Medical Customer Engagement, the role of digital and AI in personalizing each interaction at scale, or simply delivering meaningful customer engagement. So I am delighted. I have my dear friend with me today, Alasdair Stewart, who is the Digital Medical Engagement Director at Novartis. In this role, Alasdair is responsible for all the digital transformation of the Novartis field medical teams, and he has this ambition to drive personalization in every interaction. Prior to Novartis, Alasdair was a life sciences consultant focused on large-scale strategy, innovation, and transformation programs across medical affairs, commercial, regulatory, R&D, and IT. So I'm really happy you're here with me today, Alasdair. And to introduce myself, I'm David Logue. I take care of strategy here at tact.ai, where I'm responsible for all corporate, customer, and product strategy on how we help the life sciences industry nurture meaningful customer engagement through our human-friendly software. So more on that to come. Before that, I spent the last couple of years running strategy at Viva here in Europe, and after that, about 20 years with Accenture, where I was a partner in the digital practice, helping customers really focus on digital strategy. Now, as we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Alasdair for his time and for the wider Novartis organization, who really helped us here at tact.ai grow in the life sciences sector over the last few years and really develop our products to meet this industry's needs. So thank you, Alasdair, and the wider team. The second thing I just wanted to quickly announce was the logos here at the bottom. We just announced yesterday, actually, a new round of equity financing, which we're very happy about. So thank you, Novartis, for being a core investor in us. But also McKesson and Eli Lilly have joined us as core investors in that equity financing round. So thank you very much to all of those organizations. Right, to tee up the session, we have a 4-point agenda. Really, we're starting with why and why now. Then we'll talk a little bit about the how, we'll talk about the outcomes, and we'll talk about what's next. So to get started with that, or before I get started with that, let's talk a little bit about Hopin, the platform that you're in. So just to remind you, you've got a Q&A section over on your right. And you've also got some polls. We will ask 2 poll questions during the session, and they'll pop up in that little polls tab, as you see on the right. So when that bit comes up, I'll give you a nudge and you can vote. Okay, let's get going. So the Novartis and tact.ai partnership started really with one question, which is how do we solve an objective on engaging with medical experts that's the primary driver. Now, why and how? Well, HCPs' expectations, we all know that, have evolved. And of course, Novartis responded very quickly, as did many organizations, but Novartis responded very quickly by employing AI and digital tools and techniques to increase their personalization. Now, that is pretty exciting. I think it's pretty innovative, and I think it's pretty interesting to share. So I think we're going to share some of that today. Now, Alasdair will share really all of his experiences throughout his career, and we will go quite broad in this and then focus in on some of the narrow bits as well. So looking forward to it. Okay, Alasdair, why did Novartis act and how did HCPs react?
So I think, firstly, thank you for having me here, David. Great to be here. Very excited to be here to talk at the event. So, before jumping into maybe the why, I like to always talk about what personalized engagement actually means to me. I think it's used so very broadly. It means lots of different things to lots of different people. But from my perspective, it's all about learning and agility. So learning everything we can about our stakeholders, their context, their challenges, their aspirations, and their preferences, and then having the agility as an organization to actually tailor experiences to meet their individual needs. So in this day and age, honestly, we can learn about our stakeholders in so many different ways. We have conversations with them, we see on social media, we see on other online activities. We don't really have an excuse to not be personalizing our engagements with them in this day and age. And then we combine that really with the simple human fact that we like to talk about things that we're interested in. It becomes a no-brainer really that we have to be better at this as an organization and as an industry, to be honest, as well. If we take, for example, an explosion in the number of marketing emails and messages I'm guessing all of us have experienced over the last 18 months, most of these for me started Dear Alasdair, so good start, that is my name, but then go on to talk about solutions that are going to increase sales. So honestly, it takes maybe 2 or 5 clicks to quickly find out I work in medical affairs, depending on how much you know about me. And why would I then engage with a company that doesn't understand or appear to understand what challenges I'm facing, the medical affairs organizations are facing, or what we're trying to achieve? Worst of all, maybe they do. Maybe they could actually really help us with some solutions that could address some of our big challenges. But the lack of a personalized experience for me means I may never find out. And I think we see this more and more, and we see a huge amount of it as well. So it's really that combination of our stakeholders and, to be honest, just societal expectations around personalization, and also our growing ability to actually do some of this stuff, that were the main drivers for us in Novartis to push us on that path towards personalization. But I mean, to be transparent, we're only at the beginning of this path in the industry, and in Novartis as well. And we don't know that it's going to work, but our hypothesis is that if we do personalization well, it's going to help us to engage and partner much more effectively with the external community. And there's a lot of data outside of the industry that supports this hypothesis. So we know that consumers, up to 70% of consumers say a company's understanding of their personal needs influences loyalty. We know that personalized call to actions convert 200% more effectively than standard call to actions. And we know that consumers, up to 72% of them, only engage with personalized messaging. So not only that, but anecdotally as well, we are starting to see evidence that the solutions we are putting in place are actually starting to help our field teams in areas like pre-interaction planning and follow-up. But I mean, to be honest, we do still need to test the overall hypothesis more robustly in the environment that we all work in medical affairs. Ultimately, it's these external partnerships that we want to try and improve that are going to help us to deliver on what our mission is as a function and as a company. And we want to be able to enable this to happen faster and with greater impact. But I mean, as you can imagine, it's not particularly easy. It's not the easiest journey. When I think about our experience over the past few years, there have certainly been some bumps along the road, shall we say. Of course, there are technical challenges and technology challenges, whether that's creating the core infrastructure you need to do this, whether that's the alignment of data models, whether that's integration with legacy systems, which I'm sure are all problems that are very familiar to the listeners and to the audience here. But on top of that, there's also other challenges like content challenges. So if we think about the agility that is required to deliver a personalized experience, that requires us to basically fully rethink how we create and manage our content. And that's not really changed that much in 10, maybe even 20 years. But to be honest, the biggest challenges that we've faced are around mindset and change. This all comes with big changes in the way that we work. And that involves changes in processes. It involves changes in the capabilities that we need as an organization to be successful. It includes changes to the accountabilities that our teams have. And honestly, there's no fast fixes for any of these. We're definitely trying and continue to try, but that's probably why, if I had one piece of advice, it would be to ensure that technology alone is not seen as the answer to this personalization challenge or personalization puzzle. Without the right people, the right processes in place, we'll never be able to deliver these experiences at scale, which is, in my opinion, what we should really be striving for as an industry.
Excellent. I think that leaves us open to a little opportunity to have a quick poll question. So if you can go to the poll tab over on the right-hand side, audience, I'd love to just get some of your feedback on the first poll question, which let me just flash up for you so you can see. So what challenges are you facing moving to a more personalized model in medical interactions? Is it internal buy-in? Is it data challenges, platform and suitable budget? Is it something else? Love to get your feedback real quick on that. Okay, thank you. Very good. And then in terms of how we see that moving forward, what do you think? What's next, Alasdair? Where do we want to go next?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think realistically, right now, it's about embedding these capabilities into probably our priority areas. Realistically, so that's moving from new ways of working, much more to business as usual, something that the teams are successfully implementing, working in this way. And that will help us to collect the data that will test our hypothesis, number one, and also measure impact. Because of course we need to be measuring the impact of everything we do and how it's going to be helping us on our mission. The next phase is going to be scaling. So, we want all of our field teams around the world to be working in this way and all working towards that common vision, for want of a better word, on how we should be engaging and partnering externally. And that requires obviously that next step, almost as an organization, to take from testing and testing these things and to a full commitment. And that's obviously a big jump in an organization. And then thirdly, and I guess probably most excitingly from my perspective at least, it's about enhancing our capabilities. So, I don't really believe that the principles of learning and agility that are driving personalization are going to change much into the future, or at least in the nearer future. But I do believe it's going to become easier and easier for us to actually implement these experiences. As our capabilities, our mindset, our technology advances, I'm sure we'll have more knowledge and data on our stakeholders. I'm sure we'll have more agile content, and I'm sure we'll have a diverser set of channels that we can use. But really, it's going to come down to us, as an industry, as a company, with some help from the technology, of course, to bring all these components together to really deliver on personalization. I would say that, for me personally, I believe actually our biggest opportunity in medical affairs around personalization is actually in the non-face-to-face channel. Our field teams are already leaders, frankly, when it comes to personalized engagement. But there is a real need for us to engage and share our science with those HCPs that don't have access to our field teams, and that are doing a lot of their learning or almost all of their learning online. So there's a lot of change happening in this space, and I quite often like to use the anecdote of a professional cycling team called Team Sky. In their heyday, which maybe has passed now, but still the philosophy in my mind stays. In their heyday, they believed that marginal or incremental gains would lead to a transformation in performance. And I think this is exactly what we should be thinking and exactly the philosophy that we should be following when we're working in this area. I don't think we can believe that we can do this huge jump. Of course, there's some foundations that need to be in place, but if we think about what we can do incrementally to take us to the vision we have around personalization, we'll get there. And not only will we get there, but the organization will come with us on the journey, which, as I've said, is some of the bigger challenges that we definitely face when it comes to moving to the place that we want to be.
Thank you very much, Alasdair. That's a really, I think, comprehensive explanation, which takes me to perhaps my second poll question, if that's okay for everyone, if we'll just jump in. Really, the question for this one is, in what areas would AI support better personalization for medical in your organization? Is it expert engagement? Is it medical operations, medical education, amplifying the voice of the patient, or something entirely different? Maybe if you select other, that would be quite useful to see. So again, on the right-hand side, if you click on polls and click one of the options, it'd be really good to see. Just some interactivity and some feedback would be very, very useful. Thank you very much.
And I can see, David, as these are coming in, I can see expert engagement popping out probably as the predominant one, as well as medical operations, amplifying the voice of the patient. It would be great now to hear maybe from you and from the tact team around what you're going to be doing to help us in some of these areas, maybe address some of the challenges that we've talked about that the audience have voted on, to help get to that next level of personalization and to take that jump into the next stage of the journey.
Fantastic. Yeah, happy to. Absolutely happy to, if I can get my technology to work. So a couple of things we've been working on, and we've been working on with you at Novartis, but also with other customers in the industry and across the industry, is really this kind of movement or this shift. We've heard it all day, actually, in this fantastic summit that Dario and the team have put on. We've heard it from many of the speakers this afternoon or this morning if you're in the US. Really, it's this kind of move to engagement, which is how do we really get true engagement going with customers, with stakeholders, with HCPs, really across the ecosystem, and how are you best engaging across medical affairs entirely through your MSL and your field teams, but also through your commercial and your commercial sales reps, your key account managers, et cetera, et cetera. How are you doing that engagement? How are you moving from at the moment where you're working in almost this sort of system of record sort of mentality to that system of engagement? And of course, we all saw that getting massively accelerated during the course of the last 18 months. That's not a surprise to any of us. So just a quick thing on tact.ai, just to introduce the company, just to make sure that we're sharing a little bit about what we've been doing with our key customers in life sciences. Really, there's four main areas or four outcomes that we're driving. Number one is around boosting field productivity across commercial and, of course, medical. You've just heard some examples there from Alasdair, so thanks for that. Really, it's about helping the life science organization nurture those meaningful customer engagement, but through a human-friendly interface, whether it be a mobile phone interface, an iPad interface, of course, Surface, a Microsoft Surface, for example, or indeed a laptop. If you happen to be a medical user, you might be more comfortable using a laptop. The next one is around increasing, perhaps you've got a next best action program going on with one of the strong vendors out there, or indeed you have an in-house program that you're developing yourself. One thing you might have seen as a little bit of a challenge is just that last mile, getting those fantastic insights or next best actions to the field, whether it's the commercial field or indeed even to medical, whether it's a key medical insight you're trying to share an action at the right time contextually. So one of the things we've been working on quite a lot is using some AI technology and ability to get that nudge or that actionable insight, as we call it, right into the hands of your field, and then really getting the loop back on what actually happened with that insight. Was it useful? Did they action it? Did they find it useful? And could they actually have a stronger customer engagement because of it? The third one that we've been working quite a bit on is this transition to hybrid, which is really what we've seen and we've talked about all afternoon, is how do we better equip our field team members to have that kind of in-person but also online conversation? How do they have that switch between the virtual and the physical? It's not as easy as we've all thought or seen, and it's very different results depending on the team member or indeed the customer relationship that team member might have with that key stakeholder or HCP. So one thing we've been trying to support is, could we do something better in that sort of Microsoft Teams environment where you're having that virtual call? Could we have something where you're flashing up some key insights? So a key medical insight about that customer or a key customer insight to help with that conversation or help with that discussion along the way. Now that, of course, only gets presented to the pharma company employee, as you would expect, whereas the customer is feeling very, very comfortable in their familiar environment of a Microsoft Teams call. So think of it like a heads-up display, perhaps, where you're driving along and you can see just the key information that you need, such as your speed, perhaps how much fuel you have left, that sort of thing, or battery, how much you have left, whatever your state of charge is. So that's the sort of insights that you would be presented within that call. And then the fourth outcome that we're working on or driving towards is, how do you help engage customers? So really think about this as the pull method. Now, I heard that discussed in a couple of the sessions earlier, and I'm really, really happy to hear that. But really, you're talking about pull engagement. You're talking about HCPs reaching into a pharma company to find the insights that they're looking for a particular need or particular educational purpose, or potentially they've got some patient situational problem that's coming up that they know, and they really want to find the right person to connect to, or the right piece of information, or the right asset that you could share, of course, compliantly with them. And we have a tool called our portal, which works within your existing customer portal to provide that interactivity. It's like a WhatsApp channel, so you can have chat. It has a document annotation. It has voice and video itself. Should you want to have a quick conversation, think about it in terms of a use case as you're perhaps working on a speaker program and you're liaising with a HCP on that. So a great use case and a great example of that tool and how does that help. And then what does that look like? Really just to show you two very happy faces, both your in-house team of your rep, your MSL, your key account manager sort of role, And of course, you're very happy HCP or other stakeholders on the right there. And what our customer engagement platform is really focused on is your channels at the top, your channels in the middle and your devices on the top. So any device, so it's following really the rep or the MSL in their workflow. And that's the key bit here. You're not trying to have them work across multiple systems. It's one solution that's like acting like a single pane of glass. It's acting across the various channels that the customer chooses to work in. If they want to work in Microsoft Teams, they can work in Microsoft Teams. If they want to work on the phone, or if they want to have a face-to-face meeting, all of those are fantastic channels to use. And of course, down the bottom, what I'm just trying to highlight is some key pieces of technology that we have got 6 key patents on to really try and deliver that experience and improve the experience. And then, of course, down the bottom, what I was trying to explain is that single pane of glass. It's really trying to make it easy to interact with your system of records, which are your CRM, of course, your email and your calendaring system, your next best action engine, or maybe your BI solutions that you have in-house, and any third-party data or content that you are, of course, using. So with that in mind, I think maybe, Alasdair, if it's okay, we'll look at some of the questions that have come in.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Okay, Andreas has asked a very interesting question. So how's the collaboration that you're seeing across the industry, perhaps between medical affairs and commercial, the MSL, versus or with the rep?
Yeah, I think with is definitely better. You know, from our perspective, of course, an MSL and a rep have very different jobs. I mean, that's a given. But there are common challenges that they face. And there are common pain points in the journeys that they have on a day-to-day basis. And so there is a need to collaborate, particularly when we're thinking about technology and technology that can help our field teams. We can use technology and we can use the value proposition that technology has around simplification and enhancement to help our field teams, I think, regardless of whether they're an MSL or a rep. And then, of course, there are the boundaries that exist in all of our companies when it comes to the collaborations that exist. So there's definitely the ability to work closely together to find solutions that will help our teams that don't require, you know, huge, completely independent platforms and systems. And that's how I believe that we should be working.
Fantastic. Another question that I see come in here, which I think is an interesting one, it's around adoption of CRM by medical and MSLs in particular.
Yeah.
Sometimes new tools are perceived as difficult to use by the field. What's your experience there, or what have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, it resonates. It resonates very, very closely with me. So it's not easy, and you know, some of the big challenges that our MSLs and field teams generally are facing is around the number of platforms. It's often very high, and they're often asked to enter information that may be duplicated in multiple places. It may appear to have no relevance or value to the role that they're playing. So there's definitely challenges. There's definitely a big push and a big need to support any of our technology solutions with effective change management. And, you know, effective change management is really hard. It's not something that typically is invested in as heavily as it probably should be in the industry, and actually in all industries from my experience, particularly as a consultant. And it's something that without that, any product will struggle. The other piece I would say is user experience. It is by far, in my opinion, the biggest thing that we can improve to improve adoption of these tools. If we have something that is easy to use and delivers value for a field person, I don't think we can argue with it, you know? Whereas quite often what we get is our solutions that maybe don't actually address challenges that exist, maybe have been built a bit in isolation, and therefore don't really address a need that exists. And that's when you have big problems with adoption. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. And then when we build it out, and you know, we want to create these as products, you know, and manage them as, I guess, traditional technology products should be managed, which is improvements and enhancements incrementally that continue to address the user's needs. And that is a philosophy that I think we all need to have when it comes to technology and deploying technology into our teams. And again, that will help once you are able to not just say that, but do that and prove that that is a philosophy that you're following. It really does help, again, in my experience with adoption, in partnership with that effective change management that I mentioned first.
Excellent. Thanks very much. And then maybe just one or two others. One question was, how are the HCPs, receiving these personalized interactions? How does that working for you?
So I will take receiving here as, is it good for them? That's how I'll define receiving here. So, to be honest, we're still early. So we have, as I mentioned earlier, we have anecdotal evidence that this is working. That if we personalize, if we have more relevant conversations, if we deliver more relevant content when we can, then it has a greater impact. That is something that we have anecdotally. We need to gather evidence and data that supports that, as I said, in a more robust manner. Absolutely. That's our hypothesis. We have to test it for sure. But I feel like we're in a low risk ground here. Everything, the people that we're engaging with are people. So they have Netflix accounts, they use Amazon, maybe they have Apple or Samsung, whatever it is, they're used to having information that's relevant to them pushed to them, or they're used to engaging with companies that have the information they have on them and can therefore tailor their responses and engagement to address what their specific need is. If we don't do that, then I just don't see how, as an industry, we can effectively engage with our stakeholders. And if we can't effectively engage, we can't share science. We can't identify data gaps that may exist. We can't partner with patient advocacy groups. We can't do these things effectively, and we need to do these things effectively if we want to improve patient outcomes, which is, for all of us across the industry, should ultimately be our goal, and is our goal. So I think we're low risk and we need to do this.
Excellent. And then we've just got a moment or two left. So just maybe a quick comment, if you can, on an interesting question from Orale, which is around, they're facing a big challenge around how to communicate efficiently, I suppose, effectively on off-label on top of the classical MSL interaction. So really the question is off-label studies. Is there anything you can share or consider about that with your wider experience?
To be honest, it's not my area of expertise, so I don't want to touch particularly on that area. I don't have that expertise in my background.
Excellent. All right, I think we'll wrap it there. Thank you very much, audience, for your interesting questions, and hopefully we've provided some interesting answers for you. I hope you found value in the session. Of course, if you want to do a follow-up with either of us, we're on the platform, or you can ping us, of course, on LinkedIn. We'd love to talk to you at any point. Or if you're interested more on tact.ai, of course, we have a booth, and you're more than welcome to swing by with any questions you might have. With that, thanks. I will leave it there. Thank you very much, Alasdair, for your time and for sharing your insights with us.
Thanks, David. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.